Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to another episode of At My Sister's House. I am excited. I got my sister here. Whenever I see you, I know we're going to have a good time.
Always a laugh.
Always. So hopefully we're going to get some knowledge in this episode.
That part.
But I am here today with my sister, Sister Akilah Muhammad.
Yes, ma'am.
We're going to look at the dynamics of food, cooking, the spirit, taking it all into effect of who and what we are, looking at it from the perspective of food and cooking. So welcome to another episode, and thank you.
Thank you for having me.
The reason I had you on, because I know you have done everything from catering, having your own business, doing classes on yoga, looking at the dynamic of food, and that's what I wanted to look at. Of course, we've studied how to eat to live, so we take that in account in our everyday.
Absolutely.
But the science of food, there's a whole science to that. So let's talk about that.
Yes.
From a catering standpoint, from a mom standpoint, how do you go into looking at food and the care to the body?
Well, I'll start at how I even started cooking to begin with.
Yes.
So, of course, being raised in a nation, we started learning how to do a lot of these things early. And I was the oldest girl in the house. So really, I started learning how to cook around 8.
Wow.
Yeah. I would, of course, sit in and audit the big class.
Right.
When I was younger, when Sister Zora would take us over to her house, she would take the junior girls, and show us how to cook. And that had impact. Of course, both of my parents are foodies.
Right.
They were vegetarian before it was really cool and before everybody was vegetarian. So a lot of what I've learned around food came from my parents. Now, initially, I didn't want to learn how to cook for real.
Right.
My father used to send me into the kitchen. So let's just say it's a Sunday and there's everybody sitting around after the meeting. They're watching a show. My dad would always send me out the room into the kitchen with my mom. And I'm like, I want to watch the show.
I was watching that too.
It's like, so now I appreciate it because I learned so much, between my father teaching my mother how to cook and her learning more about the science of food and cooking through the MGT class. Just learned a lot. And being the oldest, I was always asked to cook.
Yes. Yes.
So fast forward, I was always, of course, second mom, being the oldest girl of my parents' children. When I went away to school, I was on campus. My friends were the first ones to have a kitchen.
Right.
And so our thing was, if you bring it to Akilah, she'll make something out of it, right? I mean, literally, they would just bring all types of random stuff. I got a pepper, this, and they knew I didn't eat meat. It was just not in my repertoire of things because I didn't grow up eating meat. I was always going to be creative, right? Once I got in the kitchen and realized that I could have fun, create, and I'm a nerd. So I would always watch cooking shows, literally reading cookbooks, all kind of stuff. So when I was at school, we would experiment. They'd be like, oh, we got this, this, and this. Friends bringing stuff to the dorm. I'm whipping it up. It just became a thing. Akilah will cook. Just bring stuff. And we will cook. I have friends now who have full-fledged catering businesses from learning how to cook in college, vegetarian food. And now this is a lifestyle for them, So yeah, dibbled and dabbled. When I was in college, I started eating all plant-based with no dairy. I, of course, was raised vegetarian, and at times we were vegan too, but it wasn't until I was in college and on my own and just health-wise, reading Queen Aminah and just the feminine aspect of how food impacts our bodies. I'm like, okay, there's some changes I got to make for myself. So for about 8.5 to 10 years, I was strict vegan, like no mess ups. This is what I do. This is how I live. Of course, over time that shifted and I started shifting back into doing things our way. In anything that I do, the standard, because I believe we have to set highest standard, period.
Right.
It's very difficult sometimes, but at the end of the day, the standard is always this one, our standard in the nation. I'm always striving to get here. Not there yet. I've had moments where I'm like, I'm winning. And other times like, so it's that constant thing of like striving to reach the highest standard, right?
But you know what you saying that, let me just jump in and say, I appreciate you saying it because it's not always just I'm on it, and I got it, and now I'm good for life. There are sometimes days we're on, some days we're off, and especially living in the society we live in.
Absolutely.
You know, you have commercials with run to the border 24 hours, you know, McDonald's and Burger King and pizza, and they bombard you. And even food that they consider better foods at restaurants, you get bombarded with it on television that it becomes everything.
Yes.
So it makes it sometimes a little difficult.
It is.
And then as Black people, we tend to do everything around food.
Yes. It's very much a socializing dynamic.
Yeah.
And to that point, another thing that I was like big on was not only cooking food, but sharing food. I'm a lover of people and conversation. Like, no, come eat. I'll cook for you.
Right.
You know, I want to cook for you. Let's, you know, I want to have good music, good vibes. Like, we're going to eat together. But trying to, and again, in the vein of raising the standard, raising the energy, the vibrational aspect, that comes when you're eating certain kinds of food, when you're eating life food.
Yes.
You know, you're not going to have the same energy eating dead flesh versus fresh, healthy foods. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to add to the vibrational tone of your experience, right? Exactly. So I used to do what's called grub parties, and that's the phrase honed by Bryant Terry, who's a Black vegan author who I love, by the way. But he would do these parties where he would invite friends and family. They eat. And it's a playlist playing.
Right.
I love making playlists. So music, food, they go together, right? So in that, started doing that in college, moved to New York. And I would just cook little stuff, like, because I'm always cooking for people, right? And my husband at the time was like, oh, we should do this festival. And I was like, ooh, festival? Like, that's a lot, you know? I'm like, and mind you, at this time, I'm pregnant with Fatimah.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, you know. So baby in my belly, baby on my back, and I'm making these veggie chicken wraps for this festival. Right. It was the Brooklyn Red Hook Festival. We do it. There's a DJ there. He used to do articles in Vibe magazine, DJ Babito, a.k.a. Cucumber Slice. He comes to my table, eating the food. He's like, yo, this food is mad good. I'm like, oh, you know, thank you. I'm not thinking nothing of it. I'm just like, okay, cool. He's like, nah, I gotta have her once a month do a vegan, because he's vegetarian, or was, you know, mostly eating vegetarian food at the time. And he wanted that option at one of his parties that he would do monthly. Mind you, I'm pregnant and I got a 2-year-old.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, how am I going to do that? So I started cooking sandwiches, vegetarian sandwiches. And my husband at the time would go to the club, sell the sandwiches, and they'd be like, who is this girl? Like, we want this food. So that was kind of like the start of me, like, really catering for real. Then I moved to New Orleans for like a year, did another festival. And, you know, New Orleans is a food place.
Yes, they are.
So,
and you talking the Creoles and
yes,
and the flavors.
Yes. So I was so nervous. I'm like, they're not going to like this. You know, like plants, I don't know. Like, I don't know if they're going to eat my stuff. You know, they like food, you know. So I go, it was a smaller like event and festival. And I think it was a film festival or something, Black Film Festival or something. I had a vending table there, and it went really well. And people were like, yo, no, the food is like really good. Like the flavors are really good. So I'm shocked and surprised and just like, yo, if they say it's good, like it's gotta be good. This is a food place. Right. You know, and so the other thing is just kind of in traveling, I love to travel, both in state and, you know, in the country and out of the country. And I'm always like, when I'm eating, trying to find other things, other flavors and stuff to add to, again, plant-based food. Because people assume it's going to be nasty. It's going to be brown. It's going to be green. It's not going to be good.
Plain. Bland.
Exactly. Which unfortunately sometimes is the case, depending on where you go. But that is not the standard, right?
Exactly.
So, you know, taking influences from that. At the time, I was married to a man whose family was Jamaican. So, of course, I would be in the kitchen like, what y'all? Right. You know, what's in that? You know, kind of looking at the veggies they're using, the spices they're using, and I'm taking that. Okay, very good, taking notes. The first time I did a pop-up, I used to do pop-ups monthly at the Museum of Contemporary Art. Now I think they have a restaurant in there. But at the time, they were just kind of trying to see if they could have a restaurant in there. So they tried different people out. And I was one of the first people in there. I'm there. Somebody has my food. At that time, I think it was like a smoky red bean soup or something. The first review I got was, this soup transported me to the islands.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God, he got it, you know, because again, I'm taking from everything that I'm being exposed to.
But using that standard from How to Eat to Live that we have, adding the flavors and all of that.
Yes, excellent. Yes. So, yeah.
And that began the journey.
Yes.
I'm so grateful that you said about that standard, because a lot of times we think that we need to do outside of what we've been taught.
Absolutely.
Forgetting that what we've been given, it can't get better. When a book say from God in person, pretty much you got the epitome of what you can get in a subject or in any subject. Now let's looking at food, looking at the fresh vegetables, and the fruits and the herbs and how we can cook, the benefits to the body, energy-wise, our appearance. Did you notice that difference from, because you have some of the most beautiful skin.
Thank you. Oh, praise be to Allah.
Reflection of the diet?
Absolutely a reflection of the diet. And what is so funny about you saying that is, as I was like doing my skincare regimen today, I'm like, you know, the real reason I keep my diet in check is because I'm vain.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. I don't want my face to be jacked up. No, but it really. But what I will say is, there was a time when I was doing farming. I don't know if you remember that, but I was doing farming, and at that time I was almost doing mostly raw because I was just getting so much fresh produce.
Right.
I would say that was the best time in terms of my health in my life. You know, of course I was doing a lot of other things too. Farming, I was biking, I was, you know, doing all of these things, but the healthiest I had ever been, because I was growing food and I'm seeing the benefits of my daily work, right? And I'm like, oh my God, but I grew this. And so when I really, really started doing the catering, I was helping to harvest this stuff and then serve it to people, helping to harvest this stuff and then just giving it to my children. Like, there is no greater satisfaction than to see something come from a seed from the ground and then have it on the table.
We started gardening, especially during COVID. So we're at home. I didn't realize how much work.
Oh, yeah.
And we're talking just some plant boxes in the backyard. And it was so tedious with the details of trying to make sure that it was the best soil, making sure that it was growing right. Is it in the right light? Did we get enough water? Wait a minute, too much water. And trying to just cover all the dynamics. But the feeling of going out there and picking my tomato, pick my red leaf lettuce, and come in and know I'm serving this to my family. Greatest feeling. And the best tasting.
Absolutely, because it's fresher.
It's fresher. So looking from and it goes back to our teachings of have our own garden. This is as I heard Dr. Eileen talk about, that's your survival kit.
It is.
Right there in your backyard on your property. Now, we're looking at the dynamics of food. We brought up how to eat to live. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad was very clear in certain aspects of preparing.
Yes.
So let's look at that whole. And before we even get to the frying, steaming, baking, mentally.
That part.
The mental, because you was talking about you were growing your own food. You were eating right. You were exercising. You bike right. You're outside.
Yes, it all plays a part. All
of that plays a part. So when you're looking at it from a catering, as a mom, as a sister that's been taught, raised in the nation, how important is, and let's also factor in, you have your own yoga. So part of yoga is the meditative state. So how important is the mind? Everything.
The mind is like that's the whole thing.
The engine.
Yes. Yes, because if your mind is crazy. So when I said the journey of trying to maintain and obtain the highest standard, right? Most of that is this. Yeah. Because when you're impacted daily by you got all of this chatter in your head. You're constantly bombarded from news to just outside. Just everything is just constant bombardment, right? Right. When you're in that mental state, how likely are you to grab a piece of fruit versus a cookie?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? It's we become emotionally consumers.
Yeah.
And it's not just food.
Right.
We emotionally consume, negatives. Like, I know when I'm in a space when I'm watching, I don't want to use the word crap. So,
we'll say acceptable.
Crap TV, or like I'm binge watching something that I know is not really feeding my spirit. Right. I know I'm in a funky place.
Right.
Whereas if I'm in a higher, I'm going to reach higher for something, a vibratory tone that's much higher than where I am when I'm in a good space, or to get me to a better space, right? So, all right, let me turn on Final Call Radio on my way to work versus listening to my trap music, which I also enjoy.
Right.
I'm just saying. It has its time, right?
And it has its time limit.
Absolutely.
I love my reggae. And you and I have talked about it. I love my reggae. I have my moments. I need my R&B. I have my jazz moments. I have my let's listen to news moment. But I know how much time each one have. And back to what you were saying, we're emotional eaters.
Absolutely.
So whatever's going on in your mind, it affects our body.
Yes.
So now we got the mind state. Because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, and I love this in How to Eat to Live, if you write me and say that this is not working for you, then I'm going to ask you, what are you thinking?
Absolutely.
Because the thinking is connected to the diet. Now, looking at the food we eat, how we're preparing it.
Yes.
As a cook, what would you say to the preparation?
Oh my goodness. I mean, you know how they say, keep it simple, sweet, kids, or keep it simple, sweet. I feel like a lot of times things are just so overly done, over salted, overcooked, over sugared. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, you're doing too much.
Right.
And I think now we're in this culture where everybody is like piling on. Like, it's like, no, it's not just a waffle. It's a waffle with a donut on top. Right. Also a scoop of ice cream. And you know what I'm saying? It's like, whoa. Right. What about just a simple scoop? You know? And all
I wanted was the vanilla.
That's it. But I feel like that's carried into like preparation of just day-to-day food, where it's like, okay, simple, and I was just telling the children in the last week how, really when we're cooking, the foundation of the meal is the bean soup salad. Yeah. Maybe some toast, some fruit. And if you choose to add something else onto it, you add to it, another entree of so you're going to, if you have all of that spread, it's only so much you're going to eat. Right. And if you're eating once a day, you're not going to be able to even get half that stuff.
Take in. Your stomach is shrinking.
Exactly.
So, yeah. And then, like you said, now I saw a shake. And it was the ice cream shake with the donut and a cookie and a brownie. I don't know where the straw's supposed to go. And then there was candy. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's diabetes in a cup, first of all. And how many of these are you supposed to take in? You're right, we're overdoing it. Even now, I was watching the news and they had a caterer on and he made corned beef chili cheese fries or something to that effect. And I'm thinking it was called loaded super fries, corned beef.
That's a lot.
It was a lot going on top of fries. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was very cautious in reminding us, stay away from fried foods. And like you said, if we're keeping our diet simple, it can still be good. It can still be tasty. I had to take ice cream. I was becoming this fanatic with ice cream. And I was like, okay, I got to break up with the ice cream. I got to break this relationship. So the other night I had blueberries and banana. And when you talk about it was so good and I felt better about it with myself. Do you see that a lot when people, do they make that request, or do you notice that when people see the food and it's not deep fried and everything, they can still appreciate it the same?
I think, well, for me, I've been in circles where people were kind of already in a space of trying to be healthier. Right. So, I'm trying to think about times when I was like maybe around people who ate more like the average, everyday person. Right. I haven't really had a whole lot of interaction in that way, because a lot of times is people that are health conscious who connect me to other people that are health conscious or looking to be, right? And then it's a certain age range. I've had a lot of people who are, older women who are like, look, I'm trying to live.
Exactly.
So teach me whatever you got to teach me. Teach me that plant stuff. Right. Because I want to live. Right. I want to live longer. I'll do the yoga, I'll eat the food, whatever I have to do so I can live longer. And it tends to be a lot more women and older men who are interested in really finding out and making a choice. Now I'm seeing more because of social media, more younger people going plant-based, more younger people doing yoga and, making it a conscious intention and effort. That has not always been the case, So I'm seeing it more now. I haven't really, a lot of my interactions were with people who were already kind of in that.
Bringing in that mindset. Yeah. So let's talk about the yoga and the aspect of how the yoga benefits when we talk in the mental, the physical. How does the yoga benefit in that sense?
Absolutely. Well, one of the things I'll start with is when we make our rakats, all of the poses that we do are yoga poses.
I've noticed that. Yeah.
Yes. So you're doing yoga every day.
Right.
5 times a day if you're making all your prayers. You're starting your day off with your stretches, right?
Right.
No, but it's very much a reflection. Your mat is a symbol of, your mindset, your life, and how you choose to walk off of that mat and show up into your life, right? So, and I always say I get my life together on my mats, whether it's yoga mat or prayer mat, I'm going to get it together, right? Right. So it's very much a self, then others kind of thing. The more that you practice, the more you're conscious, the more mindful you are. And that's kind of our way of life anyway, trying to be in a mindful way with everything that we do. This is why we eat a certain way. We dress a certain way. We walk and talk a certain way. Right. That's mindfulness. Right. There's something that is already ingrained in our culture in the nation, right?
Right.
So when it comes to yoga, for me, it's that personal moment to check in.
Yeah.
To focus on my breath. A lot of times when it's a lot going on, I notice my breath is shallow. Because when you pause for a minute,
right,
it shifts everything.
Yeah.
Inside and around you, right?
Wow.
So taking those moments to I need a moment, even when I'm back and forth with the children or in traffic, that's the time you're going to catch me not acting like my yoga self.
Right.
I'm like, whoo, okay, let me breathe, So, taking that time as a choice to say, I'm going to be intentional with my body.
Right.
With my, I only get so many breaths in this life, right? How am I choosing to live and use them? How often am I choosing to use my hands in a positive way? Right. Use my body in the best way, my thoughts in the best way. Because when you're doing yoga, it's a constant physical meditation.
Right.
So you're trying to get everything. The goal is to get everything in alignment, body, mind, and spirit. When you're talking about, our culture and our way of life in Islam, we're trying to get everything in alignment. Right?
It makes you think back to peace.
Yes, absolutely.
Islam is peace.
Yes.
And when you talk about it, that's the first thing that came to my mind. It's the peace.
That's the goal.
Mother Tanetta has stressed, and may Allah be forever
pleased with her.
But when she would talk about those moments of meditation, the moment after prayer to sit still.
Yes.
And to be, like you said, mindful.
Yes.
You're conscious, but you're calm. Sister Letitia on the show Overcoming Obstacles talked about when we're laying still, that's when you worry more. But when you're able to get up and get to moving, that's when the mind can start focusing on.
Yes.
And I've noticed that. And what you're saying, when I know it's too much going on, it's usually time for me to fast.
Yep.
It's time for me to get on my prayer room, increase my prayers, to calm things down, to get back to that state.
Yeah.
So that when you said the yoga, it just brought that whole level of peace back up.
And it helps to remove those blockages of pain, trauma. Yeah. I find sometimes when I'm doing yoga or even just going for my walks, I'm crying and I'm like, why am I crying?
Right.
You're moving, you're releasing, Crying is a form of release. Movement helps to release, these pockets of pain. And we got generational traumas, all the way from slavery, that part. Yeah. So it's all of this stuff. And if you're constantly trying to detach, trying to zone out, trying to numb, at what point do you recalibrate, So I just find it to be something very, like a gift. It's like, I get to have this.
Yeah.
I don't have to go anywhere to get it. In the same way that I see my prayers, this is mine. I gotta to myself. You know, so yeah.
And the fact that it's between me and Allah.
That part.
I don't have to announce it. I don't have to discuss it. I don't even have to share that with anyone. That's my time. And what I love about the power of prayer, I get to tell the rest of the world, stand still while I take this time
that part
for me and the God.
Yes.
You know? So I thank you for that. That was a beautiful comparison and recollection for the moment of the power of our prayers, the power of being still. And when we talk about food, when we talk about the body, when we talk about the mind, this is all things we have power over.
That part.
We have control in these areas to get the mind, the body, and the spirit in alignment, in tune. And I'm going to add one more.
Okay.
And I think you and I and a couple of others, laughter.
Oh, yes, honey.
That, when they say laugh is a medicine.
Listen, it's therapy.
Oh, my God. We laughed so much before the camera came on that if we weren't feeling well, we are
We didn't know that.
We are healed now.
You already know.
The ability to be able to laugh
Absolutely.
in the midst of.
Absolutely.
And sometimes during the most trying times. You know, they talk about comedy.
Yeah.
They talk about just a good laugh, a good friend. Sometimes that's the best time
Absolutely.
to get out. And it'll lead from laughing to crying and you're back laughing.
That part.
I thank you so much.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yes.
And I hope I don't cry. Hopefully I'll laugh. No. But I just appreciate you for being my sister. Like, I feel like we have this bond that is just, I love you so much.
I love you.
Girl.
You know what? No, I thank Allah for you. And, you know, we talked about true sisterhood. And you've been there.
Girl.
We've been there.
Stories, honey.
We couldn't even
And then even just the spiritual stuff. Like the thing that I think really solidified our relationship, of course, MGT class and but we've studied together.
Yes.
We've prayed together.
Yes.
You know, and of course we always laughing together. I'm just like, that's my girl,
and the fact you named your daughter Fatimah.
You know what?
It was after our relationship and our bond. I thought that bore witness by
You are
yourself.
so funny.
But on top of that, and then I love your father.
That part.
I love
and
your
my mom.
I love your brothers and sisters.
That.
Your whole extended family.
Yes.
And we have been, as we were talking about before, this is intertwined.
Yes.
We've been a healing for each other. Again, back to the mind, body, spirit, in our sisterhood.
Yes, yes.
And the love of the sisterhood.
That part.
And I thank you. I thank you so much. I mean, then you move down the street so you can even be close.
Girl.
the bond here.
That's so funny, that part.
I thank Allah. I do. I thank Allah for you
Praise
so
be to
much.
Allah.
I love you so much. And I love that this sisterhood is that real.
That part.
This is not a thing for, and that was the reason for the show.
Yeah.
I love how we can all laugh, joke, talk, study, go.
Yes, yes.
And I wish the world could hear these conversations so they can understand the value in our MGT, the value in our training, the value in our sisterhood. It supersedes. It's not an age thing.
That part.
It's a sister.
It is. It is.
You know, and I don't care what city you in or where you. It's a sister thing for us. And I thank Allah for you.
Praise be to Allah.
Oh, I love you so much. Well, we thank you for joining for another episode of At My Sister's House. Please, if you take nothing else away, keep in mind your health, your mental, your physical, your spiritual. Pay attention to not just what you put in your body physically with food, but what you put in your mind and what you are presenting through your spirit. We thank you again for being with us another episode. Assalamu alaikum, and peace and blessings to you and your family. I love you so much.